Okay, and we are live.
Hello,
So
hello.
Hey everyone.
hey everybody. So as people jump on, please comment and let us know. But this is a Facebook Live with Zach and Jen from Viva Raw, talking about everything from where they came from to where they're going. And best of all, you guys are going to get to meet these folks at the Healthy Dog Expo in May, live and in person in Albany, New York. And I see we have a couple people jumping on already. Sorry for being a couple minutes behind, guys. Hi, Janet. I'm glad you're home today so you can join us. Janet is in one of the areas that got an abundant amount.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us, Janet, if you can, how deep the snow drifts are or where the snow's been plowed. But I know you guys got slammed compared to us.
Yeah. We're still waiting for our first snow. We're in North Carolina.
That's
Nothing
right. We're in North Carolina.
yet.
And no snow at all yet.
No.
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 We get like, if we're lucky, we get like a decent, like 1 or 2 inches, like once a
And
year.
and then the state is paralyzed, I believe.
Exactly.
Yes.
Our entire infrastructure just goes down.
Yeah, because you have no plows, no sand trucks, no nothing.
Yeah, like eventually they come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
It's very bad. Yeah. I mean, we've definitely, I mean, both of us grew up in North Carolina too. And I remember like school being canceled for an entire week because of like 1 inch of snow.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't even have to snow. It just has to be like a thread of snow and then everything will get canceled.
Well, and I think because the drivers there are so inexperienced at dealing with it, it's probably wise.
Right.
Just stay home, give them warnings so everyone can rush to the grocery store and get milk and eggs and bread. Right? Those are the things you buy.
It's like the apocalypse.
Yes, people think it's an apocalypse.
Yeah.
So welcome, Debbie. Welcome, Amy, all the way from Texas,
Hello.
where she doesn't have any snow either. So since we've got a good crowd on here already, let me say a formal welcome to Zach and Jen of Viva Raw, one of the hottest new raw companies out there. And I'm so glad you guys could take the time to chat with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I'm thrilled that you're coming to the expo.
We're excited.
It's actually our first event.
It'll be like our first event. It's gonna be our first. So we're pretty
So
excited.
your first event, this is your first foray into the raw feeding sector. Give me your backstory. How did you come to be the owners of Viva Raw?
Do you want to do this or do you?
Okay, yeah, I can start and you can jump in. So we started Viva officially in the beginning of 2021, and basically before that, obviously we when we both graduated college, we got our first dog, Karu, together. And as kind of like typical new pet parents, we're very obsessed with like just getting her the best of everything, and so that's kind of how we started looking into raw. So we were doing homemade meals for her for quite a while, and it was always such a pain for us. Like it'd be very messy. It would take us so much time. So obviously at some points we like looked into pre-mades, and we were like, we didn't really like anything pre-made out there. It just kind of didn't look as good or as fresh as like what we were used to doing at home. So kind of during the pandemic was also a little bit of an opportunity for us, since we were working from home and had a little bit more time on the side, where we were like, okay, if we wanted to, kind of explore having our own business, what could we do? And one of the things we knew how to do was make pet food, because we did it in our own kitchen. I mean, it was very naive of us at the time, because
naive.
there's so much more to it going from your kitchen to like a commercial real scale. But that's how we got started. It was like, okay, we kind of we knew there was other people like us looking for higher quality raw foods, like brands to actually place your trust in. And then we just kind of went from there. We started off in like a little commercial kitchen and a little freezer, going up from there to working with now in like a USDA facility. Got bigger equipment, and it's just kind of like we just slowly got to where we are today.
That's awesome. And yeah, the journey from what you can do in your kitchen to
Right.
I don't have a bowl big enough to do the batch size I want to do. and then commercial kitchen, and then somebody else doing. So you are now producing food in a USDA inspected facility.
Correct. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and what's great about them is, so the facility, we actually work very, very closely with them. We actually taught them how to make essentially raw pet food. They're a facility that produces like sausages, or like retail, like, your typical like Food Lion, Walmart retailers.
Sure.
When they're not producing pet food, and it took us a good like
6 months.
a good like 6 to 8 months of constant like convincing them. We were like we just, for the longest time, I mean, there's this stigma, right? Unfortunately, around pet food. So for the longest time, they were unwilling to bring our products into their facility because of what pet food denotes and like complications in regards to producing human food next to pet food. But we're very thankful that they gave us the opportunity. And I think, they're a fantastic partner. They're only actually 2 hours away from us in North Carolina as well.
Oh, that's not bad.
We go very frequently whenever we're producing new products, whenever, just like definitely on a monthly basis, just to, check on everything. And
well, and everything that comes into that building
exactly
has to be fit for human consumption and clean and passing inspection.
Yeah. So the reason, I guess, if not everyone is kind of familiar with like what USDA means,
right?
So USDA is the the federal agency that inspects all human food, also mostly like meat products. So what that means is that for a facility to be USDA licensed, they have to have an inspector on site at all times that they're running production to make sure everything is done according to standards. Pet food technically is under FDA jurisdiction.
Right.
And the FDA has like a really wide set of things. They also do makeups, medicines, like things like that. So
foods and drugs.
Like understandably, FDA doesn't send someone to monitor you, right? They kind of check in on you every few years, like send you some paperwork, and that's the extent of doing FDA, which is the technical requirement for pet food. But for us, we're like, with raw food, we wanted it to be made to the same standards as we have for our own food.
Right.
So that's why specifically we went for a USDA facility. We spent all that effort trying to convince them that, hey, we were, making our product is basically just the same.
Yeah, and it's making meat and vegetables. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and the second thing there is that because they're a USDA facility, all the ingredients that go into their facility have to be human grade USDA.
Right.
So we're not, even if we wanted to, like we're not able to bring in denatured things like that.
That's awesome, because that's literally external verification. Because when that USDA inspector is in the building, at any time he can shut them down and say, no, you've got to stop this and clean and regroup, and no, that's not coming in the door.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is huge. That is absolutely huge. And I see my team's dropping links. If you guys want to know where to find these guys, besides at the expo, vivarawpets.com. So these links will be active in the comments that are on the replay. So don't worry. And if you have questions, just pop on and leave them in the comments and we'll grab them.
Ask us anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And, along that line, this is your first time on Susan Thixton's list, right?
Correct.
And you talk about being transparent. If you want to make the grade on Susan Thixton's list, and guys, if you can drop a link to Truth About Pet Food, the list, that would be terrific. You've got to tell her everything.
Yeah, she is thorough. She is. I
mean, she wants the receipts for where you bought your stuff. And, one of the things that stands out when I reviewed my copy of the list was only a handful of companies are made in plants where there's a USDA inspector on site.
Right.
And I'm grateful there's a handful, but that external oversight is huge.
Yeah, exactly. And Susan, like, she asked for everything. Like you said, she asked for all of our receipts that we've gotten. And then if we say things like, oh, our farms are certified humane, she asked for, we also sent her the
credentials.
those. So basically every claim that we're making on our food, human grade, we send her the USDA seals for all of our products and things like that.
Yeah.
So every kind of label claim she verifies, gets the documents. So a lot of respect to the work she does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. And I urge everybody, even if you're doing DIY, there's so much to be learned by reading through what different members, and I mean, I look at these companies as members of our raw feeding fresh food community, what things they've done, what their journey was. There's so much to be learned about how to feed our dogs better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about your sourcing? Did you have any challenges working with, where am I going to get my beef? Where am I going to get my chicken? What was that like?
That could go on for hours about
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I would say like specifically, especially as we grew, we found this to be a pain point, good and bad. I mean, good in the fact that like we are really, really strict about the types of suppliers that we're willing to source from. And obviously the more difficult part is that because we, hold a certain set of requirements, it's harder to find these farms and it's harder to find these suppliers who we sort of like trust and can work with as the time goes on. But so just to provide everyone some detail about our sourcing specifically, things that we hold very, very close and require, obviously, human grade. The other thing that we do is, I think we were already, mentioning this, but certified humane. So all these farms need to be third-party audited for their practices to be, so whether it's like a GAP certification, if any one of you have heard that or seen that on labels, or it could be like American Humane Organization certified as well.
Yeah.
And then
basically somebody comes in and makes sure the housing of the animals is appropriate, the feeding, the handling, everything. That's amazing.
And then the last part, which is not something that you see often, but we actually care a lot about, is no antibiotics ever. And specifically, this is something that definitely narrowed our pool of suppliers quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say like we started out with going like, yeah, of course, like no antibiotics ever. But at that time, we didn't fully understand the implications it would have on our sourcing. So just to add on to that, in terms of kind of like sourcing standard, you have conventional, which, conventional farming. And in those cases, the farmers are allowed to provide like hormones or also antibiotics like throughout most of the animal's life. But the kind of the nuance here is that you're not allowed to have antibiotics in the animal at time of slaughter. So that's an important distinction because they essentially have a withholding period prior to slaughter, and so nothing's in the body. But it's like for the majority of their life, it did get those.
And that has an impact on the nutritional value of the meats that come
exactly. And so for us, we go a step further with like no antibiotics ever. And what this means, it's not just, is there chemicals in the body, but it means that the farmers actually have to do more elsewhere to make sure those animals grow up healthy. So cleaner environment, better quality food, like no overcrowding, because they can't just rely on those like medicines or antibiotics to kind of as a crutch for growing conditions.
Right.
Yeah. There's a great question from Janet that I want to kind of take a little swing to the side on. So Janet says, often people assume that raw food is cleanly sourced and buy by price.
Right.
She checks with companies, but she's been getting hedgy answers, trying to kind of dodge. And I bet you've had this experience and can speak to them. So she always reaches out to the companies that she sees and asks questions. Where am I? It would be great to know what people should ask as they're trying to evaluate the quality of a raw food and the source of their ingredients. That's the end part that doesn't show up on this.
Yeah.
So can you speak to them?
I think probably one of the most important questions they should be able to answer is like, are all the ingredients human grade? And specifically, human grade, I don't think there's, like by human grade, what we mean is like specific, like the meat ingredients specifically, are they USDA inspected, fit for human consumption? So that's what you should be looking for, because yeah, I think honestly, raw food is expensive. Meat is expensive. We see that ourselves at the grocery store. And for a lot of these pet food companies, an easy way to cut corners is with like the meat, the protein portion of their ingredients. So sometimes you get like they'll get denatured stuff, and they'll be like, oh, it comes from a USDA facility.
Yeah.
It's like the denatured portion that's kind of like not going into your grocery store side of things. So I think that would be one of the most important questions. If I had to go out and buy something, that's what I would want.
Right.
You have anything?
Yeah, I would say like the other aspects are definitely things that you can decide yourself if are important, right? So like no antibiotics ever is very important to Viva and our customers. You can decide if you want, obviously, like you can go even as far as grass-fed or pastured or et cetera. So a lot of these questions depend on like what you are looking for you and your pets as well. The other thing that I would personally look out for is like mechanically separated meat versus whole cuts. And I think this is a trickier question because not many people know about this, but a lot of the time, like fresh food companies can still get away with putting like what is considered human grade, like basically like there is human grade USDA inspected mechanically separated meat. It's honestly what is used like even in like sausages and whatever, like a lot of like
really isn't that the foundation for the pink slime?
It is. Yeah.
And I shop for my dogs at a place called Restaurant Depot, and you can buy mechanically separated turkey, and at one point it comes in a 10-pound tube, and at one point it was 50 cents a pound.
It's really cheap. And we actually just posted a video of maybe a week or two ago on our like Instagram with a video of what it looks like. So the reason why like we didn't start learning about this until we started making pet food and going to people being like, what are your options? And they're like, MSM is super cheap. But the thing about using MSM and what a lot of pet food companies that use it get wrong is like they don't so MSM comes from basically the frames and the bones of.
There's a YouTube video, and it's like
so it's kind of
the turkey carcass.
Exactly.
Little piece.
So
exactly.
Through high pressure, they like squeeze that off the frame, and the resulting product is still technically meat. But what happens is that it has a really high calcium content, and a lot of times we've heard from people it gives your dogs or your cats like really chalky stool.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that people get wrong is like they underestimate. They treat it just like a normal cut of meat, but it's not.
And there's nothing wrong. I mean, it can be human quality.
Yeah.
But it has unique attributes. And
So you just have to be aware of it and see if that works.
Right.
Now, I wonder if they use that in like if you buy commercially made meatballs for people, and you get the meatball texture of a made. And it's like really fine, and that's the texture of mechanically separated meat.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, like to a certain extent, a lot of those super like fine like meatball or sausage, basically you're eating like bits and pieces of bone.
You're getting your dose of calcium.
Yeah, you're getting your dose of
I think people normally don't get enough calcium, but I think
so it may not be harmful.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But it's just something to consider during formulation because you're right, if you consider it as like if you add that to your food, assuming it's like, just chicken breast or something like that, you're not going to get your numbers right. Your calcium phosphorus ratios are going to be really, really far off. So, without a doubt. And, I think of the beauty of using the whole animal, but knowing exactly. And that's where a lot of like DIY and prey model people, they're like, we don't want to know numbers. We know 80-10-10. And that's a defect, in my opinion, with the 80-10-10 or prey model approach. Is the variability of the ingredients that we have access to.
I mean, honestly, like we started out with the 80-10, like it's just kind of the first thing you learn, and then and over time you like learn more and more, and then you realize how you adjust. But that's how we started.
And that is the ancestral, or like Steve Brown's ancestral diet is slightly different, but I think it's an important core concept. But we have to realize that the meats and ingredients we have access to are so different.
commercially raised is so different from you know they were eating.
And even it's just like with 80-10-10, it's a starting point, right? But it's there because it's so broad. You inevitably get so much variation. Like 5% beef liver, as we were kind of talking about before, is different from 5% like pork liver or something.
Yeah.
So much the copper, the vitamin A, those macronutrients, because they're from different animals, are very different. So it's hard to say, like, as long as it's 80-10-10, it's all going to be good.
And rotation. Now, kind of speaking to that, you just added a rabbit as one of your new proteins.
Correct.
So you tell me about starting with, your starting formulas. I think you probably started with a chicken and a beef, and adding new proteins and what that looked like.
That's actually I think this transitions nicely because we actually launched our complete recipes. Some of you, I don't know how many of you in the chat remember this, but we were a pre-model raw company at one point where you did need to, purchase our base mixes and then add additional ingredients to it. We launched our complete recipes, I think, in the spring-ish, late spring of 2020, 2022. Yeah. But we actually launched chicken, beef, turkey, and duck, and left out rabbit entirely. Okay. And it's for the exact reason that we're actually discussing right now, which is the calcium phosphorus ratios. So with complete rabbit, the main ingredient in basically any rabbit recipe, regardless of probably the company that you're purchasing from, is whole rabbit. So that's the entire animal with the meat, with the bone, often with the organs as well. And what that means is it's going to be pretty high in calcium and phosphorus content. And the only way to get calcium and phosphorus levels down to the point where is considered suitable or below like AFCO maximums for those numbers is to add additional boneless meat. So you have a couple ways of doing this. You could add like mechanically separated rabbit meat. It's an option. It's high in calcium, but not like there's still like enough phosphorus in there to help you level out those numbers. Or what we did was we spent like 6 to 8 months searching for boneless rabbit meat, which is ridiculously difficult to find. As you can imagine, no one is cutting off no
one's deboning bunnies.
Exactly. It's very expensive. So essentially what we are doing now is we're sourcing the same sort of products that typically would be sold into restaurants for like French restaurants.
Wow.
So it was crazy the journey that we went on to get this product, but we were so certain that we didn't want to add any sort of like mechanically separated products into our food. And we thought that it would be, it wasn't the Viva way to just have the rabbit recipe just to have it. We wanted to make sure that we launched it with the right sourcing, with the right ingredients. So that's partially why it took so long. And I mean, for the longest time, everyone was just asking about rabbit. I think a lot of people look towards rabbit as that novel protein to help with like sensitivities and allergies and stuff like that. It's sort of like a miracle protein in that sense, but we wanted to do it the right way.
Yeah. A couple of people have asked rabbit with fur on. Now, because you are produced in a USDA inspected facility,
correct.
No bunny fur is coming in through that door.
Exactly.
Not an option. And that's, that's a weakness from the people who want something more ancestral. Right. But in my opinion, a huge differentiating factor from other raw companies where there is no USDA inspector on site and you don't know what corners are being.
Yeah, and that's the same reason why we can't do like green tripe either, because it's not approved for human consumption.
Yeah, so, you could do white tripe, but I wouldn't want to put that.
Oh yeah, it's completely bleached.
then there's like, what are the benefits?
But I mean, we still support the use of these ingredients. I mean, they're fantastic for your dog, and if you can find tripe elsewhere, we get a lot of questions about it. It's like, when will we be adding tripe? And we just say, sorry, it's just not like to hold ourselves to that standard. We just unfortunately can't, jeopardize that by bringing.
I mean, unless you could literally build your own facility to take the green tripe from those ethically raised animals. It just isn't going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. And just like the human that can you eat McDonald's once a week, it's not going to kill you. If you eat somebody's green tripe and it's not at quite the wholesomeness standard of Viva, it's still okay. There's still some benefits.
Right.
Definitely. So any plans for future proteins?
Yeah, so I would say, so one thing we've
If you're allowed to discuss this, I mean,
it's we're not working at like the FBI or anything. So one thing we've that's I think a little unique about what we do is like we like to bring in seasonal items. So just like the past year we did like elk, venison, bison, so more novel proteins that we can get like a few times a year. So I would say we definitely are planning on doing that again this coming year. I can't tell you what protein it is, not because like I can't, but it's because we are still working that out.
Right, because you've got to have a formulation in place.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So we're still kind of in the process of working on that. But
Yeah.
I will say the other sort of new recipes we have planned for this year, we are pretty close actually to having a puppy specific formula.
That's
Hopefully next month.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
And then later this year, we also want to have a line of complete recipes for cats. So we're very excited about those two.
And actually, just a quick note on the puppy recipes. So our current line of complete recipes, as you all know, like they're balanced with whole foods. And what that means also is, and partially why they're specifically labeled as like for adult dogs, is because the levels required for adult maintenance are obviously lower than required for puppies. And it's actually quite difficult to hit the levels required for like either quote unquote all life stages or growth stages if you are to use all whole foods. It is an incredibly difficult and expensive feat. But for the puppy recipe specifically, it's the only time that we're willing to actually mix different proteins. All of our recipes currently have single protein in order to make this possible. So again, we're still doing it with whole foods, but using multiple proteins and the nutritional values of different ingredients and organs of different proteins enables us to do this, which is why we have left it as specifically like a growth stage recipe, separate from the other adult ones.
Yeah, and I mean, I support the use of multi-protein foods for a variety of reasons. Number one, I had a client yesterday saying, I can't have, make 10 different batches of foods. And it's like, okay, let's make one recipe with 3 or 4 proteins in it. And we've had some variety. You are getting loads of support for the puppy idea in the comments. People are loving that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We currently have people who reach out about the complete recipes and how to modify that specifically for puppies, which you can do. But yes, this would make everyone's life easier to have.
It definitely would.
Part of having a specific, like I think with Raw, almost every company does an all life stages formula, and we obviously consider that too. But I think the reason we decided to wait and do a separate puppy formula is because it gave us a lot more flexibility to kind of tailor it specific for a puppy's need versus kind of trying to go in the middle of the road and like make everyone happy. So we're really excited about this puppy formula because we've added a lot of things for like specifically for like immune health, like establishing like healthy GI at that like puppyhood age. So
higher EPA DHA for brain health.
So we're really, I think this is going to be a great recipe because we've added all these like specific boosters.
I will have a litter of puppies soon, so
we'll get you samples.
We'll have to try this out. So look, I'm just looking at the comments. Debbie's asking about a low phosphorus recipe for kidney disease. Is that a field you might go into, the special use formulations?
I would say like we've definitely heard about requests for kidney diets a lot.
And keto oriented and such.
I think
for sure keto ratio is pretty good just to start with.
I think we would like to get there one day. Definitely. I think for us now it's like we're kind of just building our foundation of getting complete recipes, complete for cats and so on. And then I think these more specialized diets are probably what we would look into.
They're probably a ways in the future though. But I haven't, and I don't know how I haven't asked this, my absolute favorite thing about your foods is you offer both a chunked and a grind. And I don't know any other company that's doing that currently.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a common thing
awesome
is like, obviously we make these decisions in a way. We're lucky because we made these decisions for ourselves before we knew the full implication of them, and
yourself and your dogs.
Right. Yeah. And as we started growing, we kind of realized, oh, hey, like we've made a difficult commitment, but we're sticking with it. So the thing with our chunky recipe, so the chunk sizes are 1 to 2 inches. And one of the reasons we wanted to do that is, when we were looking for raw foods ourselves, like commercial pre-mates, we were like, sometimes it's really hard to tell what's in there. It's all ground up, kind of gray and mushy. So
yeah.
What we really liked about doing it at home ourselves is like we knew everything that was in the food. We could see it for ourselves. So that's why we wanted to make a chunky recipe. And I think, what that later on, what we realized is there's a reason that other companies aren't making a chunky recipe. And it's because when you grind things up and mix it all together, it does get harder to tell what's in there, and you can kind of get away with a few more things. So and with our chunky recipes, we're like, okay, we can't have like super fatty cuts of beef in there. Like one story is at one point we were considering working with like a beef supplier. And we're like, hey, can we get some samples of your 90-10 lean trim? And what they sent us was a box of so 10% of the box was like basically fat, and then the other 90% was like kind of sinew, which they considered lean. Yeah. And technically the box was 90-10, but it just wasn't like, it wasn't something
it's not
we could
like
use.
Muscle, right?
Yeah.
About like red muscle cuts. That's
right. What we wanted was like one piece of muscle with like 90% meat and like a little bit of the 10% fat.
Yeah. And sorry, that went to the restaurant.
So that went to someone else's ground beef, and that's just kind of one example of like, because we make a chunky recipe, like our criterias and what we're looking for in terms of the ingredients we use are different.
And that's a key point, because a lot of butchers and different animal-oriented, food service, they all come out with, oh, we have dog products.
Right.
And they're just grinding up whatever scraps they have. Yeah. And they'll say it's 80-10-10, but, guess what? They just threw some liver in because that's what they had. You can't trust once it's ground.
Right.
And having gotten whole beef hearts and whole beef livers, there is a lot of sinew, and you should see the blood vessels in cow liver at the central portion. I mean, they're practically a garden hose. That thick. And, is there nutrient value in there? I would have to look up if anybody's ever tested just those parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, your chunked becomes, really a higher quality than a lot of the grinds.
Right.
And conversely, you get things like fresh pet, what you see in the grocery store. And that's so highly processed. And then they throw in a few vegetables so you can see, oh, that's a chunk of carrot. And they try to fake you out. And it looks like something that you'd recognize, but it truly isn't.
Yeah, fresh pet, you can keep it in your fridge forever.
And they've had so many mold recalls, which is mind-boggling. Not a good product, and it fools consumers because it's in the refrigerated section in their grocery store.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone's asking about possible 1-pound packages.
Yeah.
And it is a concern. A lot of my owners have dogs under 20 pounds.
Right. This is something that we are looking into. We are active, like, for sure this is going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when. As you can imagine, nothing in the facility side of things is cheap. So it is a significant, like I would say, financial undertaking.
So you would think it sounds easy, right? Just put it in 1-pound packaging.
A smaller Ziploc bag.
Yeah, I think what it means for us is like we basically need to get a whole new set of equipment, like a machine that packages food,
so the labels and everything. Well, it might be something that dovetails with the puppy formulation. That may need 1 pound. And I'm glad you said about the machine and the packaging and stuff. good packaging to me is so important in fresh food, even if it's what I'm making. I've gone through so many different ways to package my homemade grind that so it doesn't leak in your fridge.
Right.
So you can spoon it out so it packs in your freezer tightly. There's a lot to consider.
Right.
And your packaging, both your initial packaging that I saw way back when you started,
Right, yeah.
and your current packaging fits the bill nicely. And a lot of companies that process in Chubb's and such, or there's a company in Connecticut I used to buy from, and their packages always leaked.
Right.
So, you know, I love that you invest energy in selecting the best packaging.
Yeah.
And I'll put up with, I can put half of that back in a Ziploc bag in the freezer once it's thawed enough to divide. I don't mind doing that with the other criteria that you guys meet. And other companies. This is not an advertisement for you, but packaging is important.
Right. Absolutely.
It really is. Donna buys 1 pound and 2 pound. Donna knows who I'm talking about that's leaking. Oh God, it was awful. And that company made 2, 5, and 10 pound packages. And the 10 pound would fit like in a huge Tupperware sort of thing. And you would thaw it and put it in your fridge. And the next day it would be swimming in bloody water. It's just not good. Not good at all.
Yeah, I would say like we're not. Sometimes our packages do leak, but
sure.
Also we've consciously actually tried to make a lot of improvements to
double the thickness.
Like we made the film thicker.
Yeah.
You know, like we've gotten more cold resistant film because honestly, how it happens is like in transit, things around. Like and you know, inevitably FedEx, UPS, you know, it's
they're
hard.
So caring about the packages.
Yeah,
well, and even if you were, let's say hypothetically, you were in a pet store and a distributor was transporting them. Yeah, stuff can happen. It happens to kibble. It happens to canned.
So we just do the best we can by trying to. I mean, we've made changes to the way that we pack everything, cushion everything.
Yeah. So I promise you, everything leaves the warehouse in perfect condition because we, you know, that's part of our process. Right? We inspect all the packages.
Yeah, and I mean, you ship pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
In mainland United States.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's got to be a challenge at times, especially in the summer.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I would say Arizona. We're looking at you, like,
Texas.
Yeah, Florida.
We're very aware of weather events across the country at this point.
You are. It was the first thing you asked when we were doing our tech check.
Yeah, and then right now there's a bomb cyclone in California.
Oh yeah, and that we even know what a bomb cyclone is. That is the hardest thing. Yeah. Janet is asking a question again. Basically about your why. And we kind of just touched on this at the beginning, but let's circle back for the people who joined late.
Yeah.
Why sing?
I don't know that we're sane. I would challenge that particular phrase. I would say, I mean, honestly, I think going back to what Jennifer said, it was just a realization that like we couldn't find what we wanted. We just couldn't find the level of quality of food that we wanted in the pre-made options that we were seeing in the stores, on the shelves, stuff like that. And then part of it too was also just a reflection. I'd say like the other half of this one is like, we just felt like there was this gap where there's this whole void that we wanted to fill. And then the second part is we personally were not super satisfied just living a life where we did our 9-to-5 corporate jobs, et cetera. We want to do something we're passionate about.
Yeah. And honestly, I think like what kind of was on our side was a little bit of naivety, right? Like we didn't fully understand what we were getting ourselves into. We just,
very much so.
But we had, you know, we were passionate. We knew where we wanted to be in the future. And then we just step by step like they were not gonna lie, it's a very difficult and challenging process. Like the first year of our existence, we made all the food ourselves. It was like on the weekends, it was 10 hours a day of making the food, and then Monday through Wednesday, it was
shipping
like
the food
every day, shipping the food. Thursday, Friday was preparing to make the food. So it was honestly just
and you were holding down day jobs at the same
part of the time. So
she was Jennifer was. She had a day job for part of it.
Yeah.
What I have to ask, you met at college. What were your initial career ops?
Yeah.
What was your major?
So we both studied like economics in college, and then after school we started working in tech as product managers. So it's
completely different.
Yeah, completely different. It was a little insane of us to try and get into pet food, but yeah, that's how we started.
But part of it was like we weren't feeling very fulfilled building software apps and et cetera all day, right? So we just wanted to do something that we actually cared about, and actually could have our hands on and actually feel like we were influencing.
It sounds like you were really hands on.
I
can picture you with a big knife and cleaver.
That is exactly what.
Yeah, and it's like it's a good thing we didn't know everything that would come, because we probably would have given up at the start. But it's like we did things step by step. There was a new challenge, every so often, and we just were like, okay, what's important is finishing this next thing we need to do, and then from on, you kind of get to where you need to be.
Yeah. People are asking if you ever will consider selling product through distributors or in pet stores.
Yeah.
Is that something that's on your radar?
That is a valid question. It is definitely on our radar, and at some point down the road, it's definitely something that we want to consider. I would say part of this too is at the beginning, the only way for us to grow at that point, to get to a point where we were like at large enough volumes where we could honestly like consider approaching a USDA facility to say, hey, will you take on this project? We believe that like we are worth your time. Was to expand like direct to consumer.
Yeah.
We just didn't have the volumes to even support retailers or things like that. Now we do work with like some independent pet shops who reach out to us. So actually, this is a good plug too. Like if you have an independent pet store that you want to carry our products, you can have them reach out directly to us, and we like offer them specific like wholesale pricing and whatever. But yes, like long term, we would love to explore like the distributor route too. I mean, it's just more complicated, and I think we just need to figure out our logistics.
Well, and the logistics, if it was a shelf stable product,
right?
Exactly. It'd be a piece of cake,
right?
We just produce it. It's got a shelf life.
Yeah, and that too, like us wanting to have control. Like right now, we know exactly the turnover of our inventory is like around like a month or so. So it's like from the time that it is produced and then like blast frozen in our freezers to when you receive it is like within like 30 days.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
As we get to like distributors and whatnot, then this starts to change a little bit. And then now we don't know exactly when they actually send it to the individual shops, how long it's in the individual shops.
And we know after 3 months, we're starting to have measurable nutrient degradation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So. And that's got to be hard. We were also talking earlier about little companies being acquired by big companies.
Right.
To lose control of your baby, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
I would not do well through that.
So yeah, that's also why
this is mine. I created it. Right. You can't change it, or you have to handle it in this way.
Right. So yeah, exactly. Like we just want to make sure that everyone who is handling it throughout the process knows exactly how to speak about our products, knows how to like maintain our products, etc. So
excellent. I'm so glad you guys are so real about every step of your journey.
Yeah, we're an open book.
You're going to give people a lot of insight into, what a company goes through.
Yeah. I think that's actually really important for people to understand is like what goes on behind the picture. Or, I mean, not just for us, but just for companies in general. It's not an easy process.
Well, and then you think about the regulatory processes and hoops you have to jump through. And things like making Susan's list, and providing customer service and doing Facebook Lives. I mean, where a lot
of fun part.
Yeah, this is the fun part of our day.
This is what we do on a Friday when we try to have a little bit of fun.
Oh gosh, you got fans in here. You definitely have fans in here. So any other questions, guys, punch them in now, because we're coming up on our hour, so we'll have to wrap up. But you can meet both Jack and Jen. Jack and Jen. Did that? Jack and Jen. The next thing you know, we'll have to have an acronym for the two of you. At the Healthy Dog Expo, my team will pop the links in the comments or just scroll back. But May 20th and 21st in Albany, New York. These guys are going to be here. Some amazing speakers. I now have both Steve Marsden and his wife coming. So you get 2 Marsdens for the price of 1. Steve Brown, master formulator, will be there. Dr. Barbara Royal, who's been involved with Viva, will be there. Dr. Judy Morgan is coming. All sorts of awesome people for lectures, for talking with companies of all types in the exhibit area and hanging out with people. It's an amazing weekend.
Yeah,
we can't wait.
Fun.
It's going to be such a good time.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot.
We'll learn a lot. We'll be a little smaller than we were last year. We're at a venue down the street. Excuse me, but you got to come, guys. That's all there is to it. I'm going to cough now. Must have a dog hair in my throat. Oh, here's another fan. The dogs definitely like, they know when you bring in certain foods, even if they're frozen. I get noses in the air. And it's interesting to see my dog's responses to different foods. So yes. Oh, and Alice is going to be there. Great. All right. Any last minute thoughts you want to leave people with about Viva? I mean, we've talked a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything else. I mean, I would say, like, if there's one thing to take away, it is just to ask the companies that you're using, regardless of whether it's us or, there are a fantastic number of other brands too. So just make sure you ask questions. And the brands that I think that you should be supporting are the ones who are willing to talk to you, to answer the tough questions, I think.
And that would even apply to kibble companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say the converse, if they're not willing to give you the information you ask for, run. Plain and simple. Right. They're not willing to be transparent about their product. And that's one thing you guys have been since day one.
Absolutely.
Well,
we really appreciate you having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time on a Friday. And to answer Diane's question, yes, Debbie Taraka is excited about coming from Wizard of Paws, talking about all the new stuff for cruciate ligament injuries. And my number one strategy for prevention of cruciate ligament injuries is feed raw. Feed raw that contains bones. Feed raw that contains great omega-3 and natural sources of glucosamine and chondroitin. So thank you, guys. We'll wrap it up. Check the comments for links. Come to the Viva Raw website and learn more about the product offerings. Come to the expo site and buy your ticket.
Sounds great.
Thank you all. Thank you all for hanging out with us.
Happy Friday.
See you at the expo.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.